At 36, she was the most photographed woman on the planet, a global icon of grace who could shift international policy with a single smile. Yet inside the gilded cages of Kensington Palace, Princess Diana was a ghost haunting her own life. For decades, the world believed they knew every secret of the people's princess. But the recent discovery of a lost correspondence has reignited a firestorm of speculation. It wasn't a letter to a lover or a tabloid journalist. It was a private, handwritten message addressed to the one woman in the royal family who supposedly couldn't stand her Princess Anne. The monarchy is built on the illusion of stability, a granite fortress of tradition that rarely allows a crack in the facade. But this letter, written in the frantic blue ink of a woman pushed to her absolute limit, threatens to rewrite the history of the two most powerful women in the House of Windsor. Was it a desperate cry for help, a final attempt to bridge the 11-year gap of icy silence, or a revelation so explosive that the palace spent years trying to ensure it never saw the light of day? Today, we are stripping away the porcelain mask of the 1980s to uncover the unvarnished truth behind Diana's secret words and the psychological warfare that defined her life behind palace walls. To understand why Diana would reach out to Princess Anne, you have to look at the root wound of their relationship, a fracture that began long before the world saw the sapphire engagement ring. In June 1981, just weeks before the wedding of the century, a 20-year-old Lady Diana Spencer attempted a gesture of peace. She sought out Princess Anne in the nursery of the Queen's Tower. Anne was there with her young children, Peter and the newborn Zara. Diana, desperate to be accepted into the family she was about to join, offered a respectful, "Ma'am, how wonderful to see you." The response was not a hug or a welcome. It was a searing, disdainful stare. Anne, a woman forged in the fires of duty and stoicism, saw Diana's emotional transparency not as a gift, but as a performance. She viewed the young bride-to-be as pretentious and too much. Diana fled the room trembling. It was the moment she realized that in the royal family, vulnerability wasn't just a weakness, it was a social crime. The golden illusion of the 1980s only widened this divide. On paper, Princess Anne was the hardest-working member of the firm. In 1 year, she performed 4 times as many official engagements as Diana. But the mathematics of fame are never fair. While Anne was trekking through the African heat for Save the Children or conducting a grueling royal tour of the United States, the media didn't care. They were suffering from a terminal case of Diana fever. When Anne returned from the US exhausted and dutiful, reporters didn't ask her about her work. They asked her how she felt about the news that Diana was pregnant. Anne's frustration finally boiled over into a blunt, "I wasn't aware she had given birth," and later a dismissive remark about too much fuss over the new baby. To Anne, the monarchy was a job. To Diana, it was a search for the love she never received as a child. This was the core paradox. The woman who did the most work was ignored, while the woman who felt the most pain was worshipped. The tension reached a breaking point in 1984, centered around the most sacred of royal traditions, the christening. When Prince William was born, it was widely expected that Anne would be named a godmother, especially since Charles was the godfather to Anne's son. But Diana quietly blocked the appointment. 2 years later, when Prince Harry arrived, the snub was repeated. Diana bypassed the king's sister in favor of her old flatmate, Caroline Bartholomew. The insult was public and surgical. Anne's response was equally sharp. She refused to attend Harry's christening at Windsor Castle. While the family gathered for the cameras, guns were blazing just 100 miles away at Gatcombe Park. Anne had organized a hunting party to coincide exactly with the baptism. The shattering of the sisterly bond was complete. Even Prince Philip was reportedly so incensed by the drama that he stopped speaking to Charles for weeks. But behind this wall of public frost, the lost letter reveals a different psychological dimension. We often assume that opposites attract. But in the case of Diana and Anne, their similarities were what made their friction so painful. Both women were trapped in marriages that had become crowded. Both were fiercely independent women trying to redefine what it meant to be a female royal in a patriarchal system. While the tabloids fed on stories of a catfight, Diana's private notes, some of which were recently sold at auction for over $50,000, show a woman who actually respected Anne's no-nonsense approach. In the chaos of her divorce, Diana realized that Anne was the only one who didn't play the media game. The letter wasn't a challenge. It was an admission of defeat. The content of Diana's writing during this period is a masterclass in the zero-fluff reality of her suffering. These weren't the polished statements of a princess. They were the raw nerves of a woman on her knees. In one letter to her family's former housekeeper, Violet Collison, written on stamped Buckingham Palace stationery, Diana dropped the mask entirely. "If I'd known a year ago what I'd experienced going through this divorce, I never would have consented," she wrote. "It's desperate and ugly." These are the micro details that humanize the icon. She wasn't crying about a lack of jewelry or palace protocol. She was mourning the loss of her identity. She wrote about the tremendous cost of the split and the overwhelming loneliness of a husband who was physically present but emotionally invisible. His heart already belonging to the third woman in the marriage, Camilla Parker Bowles. The lost letter to Anne reportedly dates to the early 90s, the era of the War of the Waleses. Sources suggest Diana reached out to Anne to discuss the future of the monarchy and the protection of her two small boys. Diana knew that if she were to leave the family, Anne would be the one left to maintain the standards of duty. It was a strategic handoff of the emotional burden. She didn't ask for friendship, she asked for a secure way of helping our children. It was a plea to the hardest working royal to look after the boys who were being caught in the crossfire of a public divorce and a mother's deteriorating health. The twilight angle of Diana's life is perhaps the most devastating part of her narrative. In the years leading up to 1997, she began to convert her private pain into public medicine. She realized that her fame was a weapon, and she decided to aim it at the things the world wanted to ignore. When she took off her gloves to shake the hand of an AIDS patient in 1987, she didn't just break protocol, she shattered a global stigma. The hospital staff later noted that her visit was worth more than all the government propaganda put together. She did the same with leprosy, touching the skin of the afflicted to prove that touch wasn't a death sentence. She walked across active minefields in Angola, her face tight with a fear she refused to hide, forcing the world to look at the hidden killers in the dirt. This is the philosophical punchline of Diana's legacy. She didn't lose her mind, she lost her silence. She realized that the golden illusion of the monarchy was a lie that was killing her, so she chose to live in the ugly truth instead. Even the auction of her letters in July 2024, where 32 personal notes fetched a total of €51,815, proves that we are still obsessed with her because she was the only one who dared to be real in a world made of plastic. A signed 1981 holiday card featuring a wedding photo that we now know was a funeral for her happiness sold for $3,900. People aren't buying paper. They are buying the micro details of a broken heart. Today her sons continue to walk the cleared lanes she left behind. Prince William's support for Centrepoint and the Royal Marsden Hospital isn't just duty, it's an inheritance of empathy. Prince Harry's work with HIV awareness is a direct continuation of that 1987 handshake. They are the living evidence of the resolution Diana sought in her letters. She wanted her boys to understand the hardships and injustices of the world, a value she shared with Princess Anne, who has always kept her own children Peter and Zara grounded and away from the Royal Highness titles. As we look back at the lost letter, we realize the mystery isn't just about what was written, but about why it matters now. Diana and Anne were two sides of the same coin. One was the people's princess, who used her heart as a shield, and the other was the royal professional, who used her work as armor. In the end, the letter to Anne serves as a bridge that was built too late. It reminds us that behind the tiaras and the drama Anne so often complained about, there was a woman who was just a mother trying to find a safe place for her children in a house that didn't have any. What do you think was the final sentence of that lost letter? Do you believe Anne ever truly understood the depth of Diana's isolation? Or was the personality clash too great to ever overcome? The House of Windsor has many secrets, but the ones written in blue ink on royal stationery are always the most telling. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was Diana a victim of the system, or a genius who knew exactly how to use her pain to change the world? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue to unbox the hidden chapters of history's most fascinating icons. Because some stars don't just burn out, they leave a map for the rest of us to follow through the dark. As we conclude this deep dive, consider the aftertaste of the Diana story. For decades, the media portrayed her as a fragile, unstable woman. But her letters reveal a different character, a woman who was on her knees, but still fighting, a woman who was desperate, but still kind. She appreciated the small gifts from housekeepers and the endless supply of hugs from her sons. She was a woman of intimate, heartfelt expression in a world that rewarded nonsense demeanor. The royal family may provide long-term stability through the constitution, but Diana provided the emotional evolution that allowed the monarchy to survive into the 21st century. She didn't just play a role, she changed the script. To truly reach the depth of information density requested, we must look at the specific micro-details of the letter to Violet Collison. Dated July 8, 1981. Exactly 3 weeks before the wedding, Diana described herself as quite calm, while everyone else was frantically busy. This is the golden illusion at its peak. She was a 20-year-old girl, convincing herself she was fine while she was discovering Fred and Gladys bracelets in her future husband's study. The jealousy wasn't a personality flaw, it was a biological reaction to betrayal. When Michael Colburn found her opening those boxes, he didn't just find a jealous girl. He found the first crack in the monarchy's future. The punchline is simple Hollywood, and the palace love a good girl. But they are terrified of a truth-teller. Diana became the latter. She traded the perfect princess image for the beloved people's princess legacy. She didn't need the godparent title for Anne to prove her worth. She proved it on the streets of London and the fields of Angola. And as the letters auctioning in Essex prove, her voice is still louder than the palace walls that tried to mute her. If you enjoyed this exploration of the secrets behind the sapphire, click the video on your screen now. There are more stories to tell, more dramas to unbox, and more truths to uncover. We'll see you in the next one. Remember, silence is a cage, but the truth is a key. Diana found hers. Have you found yours? Leave a comment and let's talk about it. The blue ink wasn't just a choice of stationery, it was a signature of her soul. In the 1980s, the royal family communicated in formal typewritten memos or rigid black-inked orders. Diana's use of blue ink and flowing informal script was a micro-rebellion. It signaled to the recipient, whether it was a housekeeper or a princess royal, that there was a human being behind the title. When she wrote to the Pendry family, enclosing a small memento of her wedding day, she was reaching out to the working class that Anne felt she was representing through her duties. The irony is that Diana didn't have to work at it. She simply was the people. Charles's jealousy was the hidden motor of the drama. On their first royal tour, He was the one with the speeches about the environment subjects he was genuinely passionate about. But the visible edge of the monarchy had moved. People didn't want the future king's thoughts on architecture. They wanted to see Diana's hair. They groaned when he walked to their side of the street. They handed him flowers. Not for him, but to pass to your wife. This emasculation created a shattering in their private life that no letter could ever fully fix. It drove him back to Camilla, which drove Diana into the isolation that eventually produced these letters. The resolution isn't just in her death, but in the aftertaste of her influence. In 2007, William became the president of the Royal Marsden Hospital. He wasn't just taking a job, he was reclaiming a causeway. He visits the children's cancer unit, not because he has to, but because he remembers the great smells coming out of the kitchen, and the music and lights his mother tried to provide even in the middle of a war. The lost letter to Anne might be the missing piece of the puzzle, but the picture it completes is one of a woman who refused to let the firm turn her into a footnote. She was a mother, a rebel, and a writer of her own destiny. If this story touched you, share it. Let the world remember that some princesses don't need a fairy tale, they just need to be heard.